So if you want to go ahead and get started, I think that's fine.
Okay, great. So we can go ahead and get started today. My name is Patsy, and I'm a grad student in psych, and I'll be presenting today with Dr. Lustig, who's a PI or professor in psych. So yeah, just a little brief bit about my research that I'm a 6-year graduate student and hoping to defend soon or planning to defend soon. And I do research on gelato monkeys, the species of monkey that lives in Ethiopia. And I'm looking at a sexually selected trait in males. And Cindy, do you want to introduce yourself before we start?
Sure. So I'm in cognition and cognitive neuroscience, and I also do a lot of collaborations and have a partial appointment in biopsychology too. And so a lot of my work right now is focused on cognition and motivation in older adults, and especially why sometimes when we give people incentives, they actually perform worse. But we also do work taking a look at some of the basic brain bases of attention and memory. And that's really fun because then I get to work with both humans and animals. So it's a fun way to bring everything together.
Thanks. So we can go ahead and get started on our slides. So our first our introduction for today is what's your role in research? So our plan for today is to, I'll start with a reminder, sorry, that we have 3 more sessions after this, and I'm going to put in the chat the link to the rest of these if you're interested. But we have more sessions in October, November, and December. If you're interested, they're also virtual, so there's the link there. And also, if you've been enjoying these workshops and you're interested in the STAR Scholars Program for the winter, Dr. Lustig is going to talk about those later. And we are having applications for that up until I think November 4th. So those are coming up in the next month. So if it's something you're interested in, now is a good time to be thinking about it. All right. So our goals for today is to first talk about the goals, benefits, and admissions information for the STAR program. And then we'll have our wonderful panelists at the end. We have 4 undergraduate panelists who have been members of the STARS program and then have been placed with research labs in psych. So they're going to talk about how they got involved in their research programs, kind of what they're doing, and kind of can share their experiences. And hopefully that'll be a good to hear from them, someone that is also an undergraduate who's taken the steps recently. And we'll be directing the panelists with some questions that we have, but feel free to put questions in the chat. So whoever is not asking questions, the other moderator will be able to look at your questions in the chat and ask those. And we'll also have an open Q&A at the end if there's anything we didn't cover in our panel. And just a few reminders for today before we get into the STARS content. To please keep your mic muted unless you are called on to speak, just to make things flow a little easier. And as I said before, you can use the chat to ask questions. And there's a live transcript available if you want to enable it. If you go to, I think, more, it's an option there. And also, I have another link to post for the pre-survey if this is your first STARS seminar this semester. And I think that's all if you want to take it away.
Yeah, I think there we go. So STAR stands for Scholarship, Transferable Skills, Academics, and Research, which is kind of a mouthful. And also it's way more fun to have an acronym. So that's why we call it STAR. But one of the things that we really want to emphasize to people is that, basically, why should you get involved in research? What can you learn from research that you might be able to use even if you decide not to become a professor, even if you decide to go into industry, and kind of expose you to all the different career options, all the different possibilities that you have, and sort of how becoming involved in research just really enriches your overall experience in the university. Go ahead and go to the next one. So it has a lot of goals and benefits. So it is different from Europe because we're helping people prepare to become researchers as opposed to just sort of plunging you in like Europe does. And we want to help people get involved in research, especially people who may not have had some of the background to know to like apply to it right at the beginning. And we do try to help you out to become sort of the best researcher that you can possibly be. So you'll get a lot of workshops on skills, you got a lot of workshops on professional networking, and basically just to help you feel comfortable and at home with this process. It can be a lot of fun once you get involved with it, but it can be really scary to go and talk to your professors and GSIs about it at the beginning. So we just want to help break down some of those barriers and get you familiar with, hey, here's what's possible and here's why you might be interested. Go ahead to the next one. So everybody is welcome, even if you're not a Michigan student, to our fall seminars, and we hope that they really benefit all of you. For our winter program, that's in person, so we do restrict it to students at the University of Michigan this year. And we especially want to target students who identify with historically underrepresented groups, like first-generation college students, international or undocumented students, racial and ethnic minorities, or LGBTQ+, or those across the gender spectrum. And also those people who have experienced financial hardship that might have limited your ability to take advantage of other opportunities before. And also just, if you have a demonstrated commitment to increasing equity and inclusion in psychology, all of the scientists could use help with this. And so we want you to help you get into a position where you can help advance those goals as well. Go ahead to the next one. So we look for strong academic performance and potential. This is something that takes a little bit of extra time, so we want to make sure that we're not interfering with your grades for your regular classes. Again, we are looking for people who don't have a lot of experience yet, because what we want to do is help you get to the place where you can get to that experience. You should have a strong desire to do the program for an additional mentorship. And we do prioritize freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, just because you still have sort of a better chance and have more time to get involved in research. That said, we do occasionally accept seniors if you've had some circumstances that have made it difficult for you to get involved in research and you have this sort of strong desire to meet these other criteria. And I would say, especially this year, we do appreciate that with COVID and everything else that's been going on, that may be more people than usual this year. Go ahead. So if you're interested in applying, please go ahead and apply on the website and let us know if you have any questions about that.
All right. So I'll start with some tips, like broad tips for getting started with undergraduate research before we get into our panelists today. So just kind of a brief overview of some of those things. So first of all, it's kind of a misconception that you need to have your own research idea to start out in research, and that's really not the case. I remember thinking that as an undergrad and then realizing that you're pretty much always going to start off with a mentor. So you'll have a mentor-mentee relationship. Usually we'll be working more directly with graduate students or postdocs who have gotten their PhD and then are still conducting research under professor. Or sometimes if it's a smaller lab, you'll work more commonly with the professor. It depends on, you can be mentored by any or all of those people. So you'll probably start out by helping, and you'll have the chance to pursue your own research ideas as you go on, but you'll start off working on someone else's project and assisting them essentially. And also another misconception that you need to have these really advanced skills to begin with. That's also something that you'll learn along the way. And, graduate students and professors who are hiring you definitely know that. So they'll know that they'll need to teach you the things, but that's really helpful sometimes to, teach a new student as they come along and can help train them on your method. And, you'll learn things as you go. So if you are interested in a biopsych lab and you've never held a pipette before, that's totally okay. We teach people how to pipette all the time. And I'm sure other areas of psych have similar similar things with, starting a brand new skill. So as you learn more about the project or the different methods, like you can take on more advanced things. So it can be helpful to stay in a lab for a while, because then you can kind of build on your previous knowledge and kind of build up that relationship with your mentors. And I don't think this is on the slide, but just to mention that your graduate student instructors or TAs, depending on what university you're coming from, are really good people to talk to. They're typically grad students like me, or master's students, and they're probably involved in their own research and need help. I've hired many research assistants that are undergraduates over my PhD, and we're always looking for people. So I think sometimes you can think that you just need to cold email professors, but actually like talking to grad students can be a good way to get into a lab or like start on a project right away. Do you have anything to add before we move on?
I was just going to say, just to remind folks that we do also have a upcoming session that's all about how to apply for research positions. So keep an eye out for that.
Yes, much more to come. All right. And I think this is you.
Yep. So, take advantage of your transferable skills. One of the things that when I started working in a lab was actually the most useful to me was I had spent some of my time in college being a temp office worker and learning Excel and Word and those sorts of things. And that actually was tremendously helpful in the lab. But likewise in the lab, as Patsy mentioned, you're going to learn a lot of skills, and you're also just going to learn a lot of sort of soft skills of how to interact with people, how to work with a team, how to stay organized with things. That's going to help you in all different aspects of life. And the other thing is that, as some of our stars might mention, especially if they did this last year, if you do, excuse me, if you do enroll in our winter program, then we give you the opportunity to actually pick up some extra skills that people in psychology, that the faculty in psychology labs have identified as being especially helpful for their labs. So that's another advantage of joining the winter program, is that we can point you to the specific kinds of skills and certifications that will be most helpful. Okay, go ahead. And lab meetings, a lot of times undergraduates aren't required to go to lab meetings, but you're welcome to. And I would say if you do have the chance to do that, it can be good to go to at least some of them, because this is really where you see the behind the scenes. All the research that you read about in your textbooks, it did not work flawlessly from start to finish. There were a lot of false starts. There was a lot of, so what do you think that means? Okay, let's try this. And so going to a lab meeting really helps you get the sense of, oh, okay, so this is how this actually works, and learn about these other projects in the lab. A lot of times there will also be discussions of papers that are really relevant. And I think reading papers with the idea of how do we apply this to our actual science and to our project gives you a whole different perspective on just, as opposed to, I'm reading this for a class and I'm going to take a test on it. So it can be a really enriching experience if you get a chance to go to some of those.
All right, anything else you want to add before I introduce our panel?
No, I think you can go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'd like to welcome our student panelists. We have today with us Spirit, Aaron, James, and Haley. So they have all, they're all UM students, I believe. I'm pretty positive, all UM students. And I've written up each of their labs that they're part of. So they're all psychology majors and have all worked with psychology labs. And I think I'll just start with our first panel question, just to, I'll call on each panelist, and if you could talk a little bit more about the project within the lab that you're working on, or projects if there's multiple, because I have the title of your labs, but just so you could introduce yourself and then share a little bit more about what you're doing specifically. So Spirit, if you want to start us off about your research.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Spirit. I'm a sophomore here at U of M, psychology major, and I'm working in the Stigma Psychopathology Assessment Lab, or you could just call it SPLAT Lab for short. And basically what we do, like the project is just analyzing qualitative data from mental health care providers and like trying to understand their reasoning for whether deciding or not deciding to diagnose borderline personality disorders among the LGBTQ plus patients. So I know like before I started, they basically like came up with like a case signet that they sent out to like PhD psychologists or like MD level psychiatrists and just different types of like practicing mental health like care providers, and they sent out this case signet to them and basically asked their reasoning as to why they did or didn't diagnose that patient with BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. And then we just analyze that data and like organize it and try to figure out if there's any commonalities or across this why they did or didn't diagnose the patient.
Great, thank you. Really interesting research and very applicable too. Erin, do you want to start off with or tell us a little bit more about your lab?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Erin. I'm a senior major in psychology with a minor in quantitative math and social science. I'm a research assistant in the psychopathology, population health, and genetic lab. And also I'm in the food and addiction science and treatment lab, led by Dr. Gilhart. So in my first lab, psychopathology, population health, and genetics lab, we look at the development of self-regulation problem over life course, with a particular focus on substance use disorder and antisocial behavior, suicide, and self-harm. And we also focus on the relationship between self-regulation problem and physical health. So for one of the projects that I'm doing is looking at the financial knowledge in college students. And in the FAST lab, we are looking at the food addiction as from a perspective of substance use disorder. And yeah, so in the lab, currently we're just doing literature review for now, but in the future, we anticipate to focus more on collecting data from patients. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, James, do you want to take it away with your lab?
Yeah. So I'm James. I'm a senior here at U of M, psychology major, linguistics minor. I work at the language and literacy lab with Dr. Yulia Kovalman. And so now I'm just working on my honors thesis with the lab, but the project I was working on when I first joined, and so we study literacy, and the project I was working with was studying the literacy development of Spanish-English bilinguals. So there's the idea that there might be actually transferable skills within the languages that might influence literacy development. And so the information that they have from Spanish, they can apply to when they're learning how to read in English. And so what I would do in the lab is I would mirror image the kids that come in, which is essentially taking just brain scanning and taking pictures of, well, in my case, I was measuring the blood flow within the brain, which measured the brain activity while they were doing a neuroimaging task, which would have to do with reading and analyzing and processing certain words. And so it's pretty cool. And my thesis is looking at dyslexia and how they might use certain elements of language to kind of compensate for the impairment that they have.
Thank you. And Haley, are you here? I think I saw Haley log on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about the lab that you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working at the Empower at Home lab through the School of Social Work with Dr. Shaolin Sean. So I found out about it through our service learning fair last semester and got involved with it afterwards. And what we've been doing is essentially we've been piloting a program for people over the age of 50 in hopes that has a background in CBT and DBT in hopes that these participants establish a more like socially connected and like uplifting mindset to their current situations. And all of this is done remotely. And we are having them work with coaches that are specifically trained within like social work perspectives. And it's a 10-week program that goes over completely remotely. And then what I'm working on specifically is recruitment is what I've mostly been doing over the summer. So I've been doing like a lot of cold calling, asking people to participate with us and doing a lot of the screening process. And part of that screening process is actually doing a Columbia suicide severity rating scale with those participants. So I've really learned a lot about applying assessments with patients. And then I'm currently working at moving into like a coaching role. So working specifically with participants to administer the program itself and support them through it. So yeah, it's been really good so far.
Excellent, thank you. That's so cool to hear so many different fields too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and Haley, actually, her lab has multiple stars in it, which is pretty cool. And you also did a great job of sort of prefacing, sort of how you can move on through multiple roles as you spend more and more time in the lab. So the next question we have is how people got interested in their research. And so rather than just keeping on going in the same order, I'll keep you guys on your toes a little bit and shake things up. So James, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Yes. What would you like to ask? Sorry.
So basically, how did you decide that this was, the research lab that you wanted to get involved with?
Oh, right. So I always knew that I was interested in language, just going into the field of psychology. And so I also had aspirations of going to graduate school. And so I knew that graduate school was a lot about research and, reading these journal articles in class. And I was just interested to get to know the behind the scenes element of it and also take part in figuring out questions, because questions would come up in class or while I was reading these journal articles. And I sort of started aspiring being the person asking the questions and, writing about it and creating experiments, etc. And so I was actually in Dr. Coleman's human development class, like 250. And I started talking to her about my interest in language development because she was very open about her own research in the class and language development and literacy development with regards to human development. And so I took an interest in her lab and I started talking to her about my future goals and what I'm particularly interested in language development. And so I found that it was like a good lab for me to kind of engage with and potentially work with, and I am now, so.
Great. Spirit, what got you interested in the SPLAT lab and thinking that was the place to be?
So I pretty much always known that I wanted to get my PhD in psychology, and I pretty much focused my interest on minority children and bettering the mental health of minority children, because I feel like they don't really get those mental health opportunities as the same as others. And I was just looking for labs that was at least somewhat related to that, because I didn't want to just let that part go. And in the SPLAT lab, I know the main thing that I was interested in was like their research on stigmas and discrimination on specific marginalized communities. So whether or not it was specifically like minority children or minority people, it was still like a marginalized community, which is, you know, not getting the same resources as others.
Mhm.
So I feel like that stuck out to me when I was looking on, I found it on the psychology lab website. I was just like scrolling through and like reading about the different labs, and then I like that really like stuck out to me. So I emailed Dr. Craig Rodriguez and told him about my interests and how I feel like they correlated with the lab's interests, and that's how we kind of got, you know, speaking about it.
Yeah, so that's a good point. A lot of times, especially your first lab won't necessarily be, you know, exactly the topic that you want to research, but as long as you're, you know, you want it to be something that you're interested in, but as long as you're picking up some relevant experience and skills, it's still a good step along the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also good to like explore different things because you don't want
Yes,
to stay in
definitely.
one specific thing you might not even end up liking. So I kept that in mind too when I was reaching out.
That's an excellent point. Yes. Haley, how about you? It sounds like you made a connection at one of the research fairs. So what made you decide that was the one to go with?
Yeah, I made that connection at the research fair, and I was just really interested in the opportunities that they were offering to research assistants to be more like directly involved in the research and not necessarily just the data entry, which I've had like opportunities to explore that as well. I was just really excited to join a lab that had a lot of opportunities for me to explore different things within my field. So I really want to go on to get my master's in social work. So working specifically with the College of Social Work was just a huge opportunity. And then on top of that, being able to do assessments with patients and have more like participant heavy experience was super important to me. And a really big deciding factor for me was that I actually previously, before coming to the University of Michigan, I worked with ophthalmologists, and I had a lot of experience with aging patients and their mental health. So it was super interesting to get a more psych perspective on that and see them kind of benefit from a program that was more geared towards them. And I also kind of wanted to challenge what I was originally going into. It doesn't fit exactly what my goals were for my career, which I really wanted to go work with more adolescents. But it has opened up my mind completely to the possibilities of dealing with patients that are aging and kind of looking at the discrepancies of them not getting as much help as like adolescents, for example. So it was just a cool opportunity. I couldn't help but take it.
Great. I mean, you know, as somebody else who studies aging, I think your lab is super cool. So, Erin, what made you decide on the FAST lab?
I was really interested in addiction, and I didn't know about food addiction before I started to search about the labs in psych department, and it just drew my attention for the food lab. Yeah, I just really curious about what is food addiction and how does that related to substance use disorder. So I cold emailed the lab before my junior year, but there was like no research assistant position open. So I was on waitlist for 2 semesters before I started to volunteer at FAST Lab. But because I was so interested in the topics, I read through all the articles, most of the articles written by Dr. Gilhart. Yeah, and I also had a mentor who was the graduate student in the lab. So I also learned a lot about what does the lab do from my mentor. So
Was
I
this your
think
STAR
that
mentor or somebody else?
it's also a psych mentor, a psychology
Okay, one
department
Max.
mentor.
Yep.
I think, yeah, must. Yeah, yeah. And I joined another lab because I also interested in the substance use disorder. And that lab is kind of look into the substance use and antisocial behavior from a public health perspective. So I think having different perspective and having like in FAST lab, I'm doing literature review, and in the psychopathology lab, I'm doing like coding and analyzing data. So like I think that would like help me to boost my skill in research.
Terrific. right, Patsy, I think you've got the next one.
Yeah. So we've kind of touched on some of it already. The first part was how you found the research group that you work with, but I think most everyone kind of talked about how they found the research group. I think Spirit mentioned going through the psych website. It sounded like a research fair for others, but maybe we could talk about some more of the steps that were involved in getting the position. So essentially the steps in applying and how you got from identifying the lab that you were interested in to actually joining the lab. Sorry if it's a little bit repetitive, but I think it could be helpful. So if you want to start us off, I'll also switch up the order. I guess Haley, if you want to start off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I met one of the established members of the lab at that research fair, and they were a little bit indirect on how to apply. They didn't have like an application like explicitly on their website, which is kind of something that I was more prepared for. So I ended up reaching out to the lab director explicitly and just kind of gave her some background. I didn't want to like overload her on information, but just wanted to express that I was super interested in it and that I had a previous background with aging patients. And I just like specifically was just super interested in the research she was doing. And then she's a little bit more informal with things. So she just kind of invited me onto a chat immediately and did like a 10-minute thing. She didn't actually look at my CV or anything like that. And, you know, I like provided it in emails, but she was a little bit more informal. So I don't know if mine's like a traditional experience, but it ended up being a really great fit for me regardless. So.
That's great. And yes, I think that is a good thing to point out, that there's often not a like uniform way that each lab is going to hire like research assistants. So it does really vary, and it might be informal like that. So yeah, it sounds like it worked out well. And that was a cold email like that you had found from the research fair, it sounds like.
Yeah, so the person that was at the fair didn't provide any of his details. They were just kind of getting the website together itself. So a lot of the details regarding there's somebody that's at the head of it, the lab like manager. She didn't have her contact details on there yet, and neither did he. So it was just the director, which was really intimidating to just approach a director, you know, with a cold email and ask. So that's ultimately why I chose to do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it still worked out, and that's great. James, do you want to talk a little bit more about joining your lab?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, mine was more so like word of mouth, I guess. I was in talks with Dr. Kovelman about her lab and how I was interested, and my research interests, which aligned with her lab and like her previous publications. And so actually I was in the STAR Scholars Program, and she mentioned that I might be able to work with a graduate student of hers working on literacy development of Spanish English bilinguals. And so I received the graduate student's email, and I sent her my CV saying, you know, how Dr. Coleman referred me and how I was interested in the project that she was conducting. And then from there, there was an interview that we did. Sorry, I'm blanking because there was 2 interviews, but I'm trying to remember what we did in the first one compared to. But usually the interviews consisted of so there's a behavioral task, and since I work with children, the graduate student, Rachel, her name is, she was kind of checking to see if I was a good fit to work with children, since I had no prior experience working with children. Other than that, I think really the most important thing is that you I feel like if there is a genuine interest in not only, it doesn't have to be the study, or because like people were mentioning, your first lab might not be something you're particularly very passionate or interested in, but I think the genuine interest in gaining research experience, skill, or even just knowledge about what they're doing goes a long way, because if they're they like to see the kind of the intrinsic motivation behind your desire to work in their lab and with them as a group. So yeah, after the interviews, I got trained on the behavioral and neuroimaging methods, and that's how I started kind of my experience there.
That's great. And awesome that you're able to like kind of pivot from STARS into a lab you're interested in. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Spirit, how did you go from identifying the lab to joining?
So STARS did a good job of like letting us know that some of the lab websites are kind of outdated, so it might not have like a direct application, but it's still good to reach out because you never know if the lab is still active. And also Dr. Rodriguez had came and spoke at one of our STARS meetings, so I was like kind of familiar with the research that he was doing. But yes, I just emailed him, and also STARS kind of gave us a template on like the type of email that we should send out to them. You don't want to follow it exactly word for word, but like, you know, just to get you like everything you need to know and say to them. So that's kind of what I did. So I kind of wrote down like the most important things that I said in my email to, it wasn't just him, I emailed other labs that I was interested in also, but I just let them know first off that I was a part of STARS. It's good to put that out there. So they know that you know something about research. And then I also just showed that I also knew at least a little something about the type of research they were doing, not that I was just like looking for a research position just because I want one, but like that I was interested in their specific research. And then I also like aligned that with my interest and how I felt like it correlated, or the things I felt like were similar, and like what I wanted to actually gain from it. And then one of the most important things, because I had did it for like the summer, like it was like before summer started, but I wanted a research position for the fall. So I just asked, is there any specific skills that I could work on over the summer that are better prepare me for this research position if you are looking for a research assistant? And then I attached my CV or resume below that. So yeah, STARS did a good job at equipping me for that. And he just emailed me back and he just was like, thank you for your interest. This is what you can work on over the summer. And so I did. And funny story, actually, why it's also good to just reach out. My initial plan was to do Europe for this year, and I applied to Europe. I got into Europe, and when Europe started in like this month, I found out that the meeting times that they gave me, like I have Spanish from 4 to 5, and the meeting time was like 4 to 5:30, and I have Spanish like 4 times a week. So I was like, there's no way like I can do that. And I emailed the person, and they just basically said like, nothing we can do, like we're full, we can't put you in another Europe like meeting session. So basically I'm just like won't be in Europe unless another spot opens up. So I was like, okay. So I emailed Dr. Rodriguez because I told him that I wanted to do it through Europe or initially. And he let me know, he said that basically he only posted the Europe, like he only posted his position on Europe for me. So I didn't even need to do it through Europe. Like he was still giving me the research position, which I greatly appreciated because I was like panicking, like I really wanted to do research early on. And yeah, he said he basically only posted it for me. So if I'm still interested and I can come to the lab meetings, and I'm like basically all right. So that's how I got with that. Yeah.
That's great. And I'm glad to hear STARS helped a lot with the drafting the email and all of that. So there is a specific STARS session that talks about those things. And yeah, I'm glad that was a helpful template, and that you're able to continue on this semester. That's great too. Yeah, and I love you and James both talking about kind of expressing interest is important. I definitely agree that not just, you know, completely broad, but about their specific research is good. And also that you're eager to gain skills, I think shows that you're like willing to learn and, you know, will be a good team member and everything too. And Erin, you talked a little bit about kind of perseverance too in joining a lab, which is awesome because sometimes, you know, there's just not enough spots. So if you could talk a little bit more about, yeah, I guess your application process and for the lab that you're in now.
Yeah, sure. For the psychopathology population health and genetics lab, I actually was in Dr. Richmond Ranker's class, Psych 230 Behavior Genetics. So during the semester, I went to her office hour a lot, asked questions about the course, and I also read some articles from her website. And so like I expressed my interest in joining her lab by the end of the semester and joined. I think I applied through her website. And then we had an interview with a professor and the lab manager. And I joined in the winter semester of my junior year. And for Fast Lab, I code emailed, like I mentioned, I code emailed a few times throughout my junior years. And I met a mentor. I talked about how much I was into the research Dr. Gilhart was doing. And I think she also mentioned my name in the lab meeting or something. So I kind of get, like when I was doing the interview, I also mentioned how Lindsay, like she was my mentor for math. And yeah, like I think just keep showing you're interested is really important. And I also sent a few emails to Dr. Ashley Gilhart because I had experience with eating disorder, which is really related to food addiction as well. So I just mentioned how her research really interests me.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, sometimes just wearing us down by keeping on telling us that you're interested does actually work. So the next question is sort of about lab culture. Like every lab is a little bit different in terms of how they interact and what kinds of activities people do, who they interact with. So Spirit, you mentioned a little bit about attending lab meetings. So can you just talk about sort of like, who do you interact with over the course of the week? Like, do you work with a specific team and then you guys have lab meetings? Do you have like one grad student that you work with? Like what does your week look like in terms of who you talk to?
So basically, we meet once a week on Tuesdays for like an hour and a half. And at that meeting, it's kind of like everyone that's involved in the lab comes. So it's like grad students, undergrads, the lab manager, and then like the Dr. Craig Rodriguez too. And I've only attended 2 meetings so far, but like we just basically do discussions. So I know my first meeting, we were just discussing like how we wanted to kind of attack all the data we have. And then the second meeting, they like sent out an article that they wanted us to read before the meeting. And then we like discussed that article at the meeting. Like I think someone had mentioned that was like a common thing. So we did that, but like my specific assignments throughout the week, the lab manager directly emails us, or like we have other meetings like maybe every 2 weeks for like an hour, and we discuss like the assignment specifically for me and like 2 other people that's in the lab. So far she just has us organizing the data and basically like kind of like trying to sum up the responses that the doctors gave as to why they decided or didn't decide to diagnose the patient with BPD. So then like they would have like a chunk of like a paragraph of what they said, and we would like sum it up in like to 2 or 3 words, kind of just like to better organize the data and like minimize it so it's not too much information. So yeah, that's kind of how it's set up. I still have to get more experience with it to see if there's like a set pattern, but that's like basically what I've been doing so far.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is you have sort of your individual responsibilities that you check in on, and then you guys could sort of come together as a team to make sure all the pieces fit together.
Yeah.
James, how about you? And I'm guessing it's probably evolved a little bit as you were moving into doing more independent research and doing your thesis.
Oh yeah, but I attend lab meetings regularly, just and I was working at the lab during the summer as well. So I attended lab meetings weekly since like February of me joining the lab. As of late, with school and everything, I'm able to, thankfully it matches up with my schedule, but also sometimes meetings are not that important regarding like my involvement now that I'm doing independent research. But also, like if you have been working with the lab for even like a few months, there are discussions of like new and upcoming research ideas that are enticing and that you can also, get involved with, and maybe you, the PI, depending on your PI, you might be asked of feedback too on what you think, how this experiment would work or if it's a good idea. But generally, for me, lab meetings have been kind of touching base with, since the lab is like an environment where everyone is kind of working with one another. There is a lot of just like touching base with everyone and their respective projects, and also asking related questions. So in my lab, there's usually people, and I'm guessing in every lab, there's probably people that are more skilled in one area than another, say statistical analysis versus like the data collection and organization and etc. And so it's usually an opportunity to get together and hash out ideas, ask relevant questions, and also just see where everyone is at and organize projects accordingly. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything important in those. But I think it does differ from lab to lab, and the most vital part of it for me is a chance to meet with your PI, especially if they're extremely busy. So I think
Which
that
many
it's a
of us
good
are.
opportunity. Yeah, so it's a good opportunity to go and talk to them about certain things.
So Erin, do you notice big differences between your two labs in terms of how they're organized and sort of how people interact?
Yeah, definitely. One of my lab is much smaller, and first lab is like a lot bigger. So we have like about 10 research assistants in first lab, but in my other lab, we only have 2. So like we get more opportunities to interact with the PI. And in first lab, I think lab meeting is really important if we want to have those interactions. Yeah, and then for the psychopathology lab, we have like bi-weekly meeting. So for every week, we would have journal articles to go over, and we have like announcement updates and share what everyone's doing, ask for advice. And sometimes we would also have like data workshops, kind of like that.
Mm.
And in Fast Lab, we have like weekly meetings, and we talk about articles as well. And sometimes we have like food addiction videos to show in the meeting. And we also have like graduate student presentation. So it was really nice that we can have a look in their research project. And I think beginning in this semester, we are also helping graduate students on their project. Yeah, and then because I was working in the summer as well, we also had graduate school talk. So that was really helpful as well.
Haley, how about you? I'm guessing you guys may have actually have changed over time because it sounds like you were sort of getting off the ground, and my impression is that your lab has grown quickly.
Yeah, it actually has grown quickly. We had like a very different, so I started working with S Lab actually in May, so right after the winter semester ended, and we had quite a big staff of like a lot of research assistants that kind of left throughout the summer. So our lab has fluctuated a lot in size and like who's working with us. So we had like a lot of undergraduate research assistants, and now we're switching more to like grad students that are completing field work. So like the requirements for those people are a little bit different. But we have weekly meetings, and a lot of what we do in those is just kind of talk about like the success of the project. We all have different areas, like James, mentioned that everybody kind of has like specialties in different places. So the recruitment typically just talks about like any kind of challenges that we had. A lot of the conversations that we have are more like almost a support group, but we're a smaller lab, so we get to have that more like personal connection with each other, where we just support each other through like interactions with participants and like insecurities that we feel interacting with some of them, because a lot of us are kind of new to this kind of work. So having that has been awesome. And then additionally, we have been getting like a lot of opportunities to possibly work with like qualitative data, or working on more like usability tests, since everything that we do is like online, and we're working with a very specific population that doesn't have a ton of, well, they may not have a ton of experience with using technology. So we do a lot to look into like how accessible the technology that we do is. So I've had like a lot of weird opportunities just throughout random meetings just to learn new things. It's been awesome.
You bring out an important point too, that especially if you're in a lab for a while, I mean, it does almost become sort of like your family or another friend group, and that people, sometimes research is stressful, and that, you support each other through that. Patsy, I think you are up next.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also love hearing the learning different things in lab meeting. When I was an undergrad, I went to lab meetings also, and I feel like it was really cool to hear about like what all the grad students were doing, and see like talks before they were presented and things like that. So I think can be a good way to learn about the field broadly too. So the next question is, so what tasks did you start performing when you first joined the lab, and how did you progress over time? So I remember, James, you were talking about working with scanning, and also with working with kids. So maybe you could start off with what you started with at the beginning and how it progressed, if that's applicable too.
So I actually started with neuroimaging kids right away. Like I did do some shadowing for behavioral assessments. So essentially these would just consist of me playing word games with the children. One example is like I provide them with a word like friend, and I ask them to complete the sentence like he is my best, or I give them friendly, and then they say he is my best, and they're supposed to say friend. And so that's an example of the behavioral measures. But I didn't do so much work with that because a lot of data had been collected for the behavioral portion. So I did just go into neuroimaging. And so I would work with the graduate student that I was connected with, and we would go to the lab where we perform the neuroimaging scans. And I would kind of first get myself acquainted with the machine and how to set it up, and also the tasks. So there's specific software that you open along with the neuroimaging machine software. And I use FNIRS, which is near infrared spectroscopy. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that word. But and so there are little like nodes that you put in the cap. It kind of looks like an EEG cap. And so that had been a big portion of my experience, which was just putting the cap on the children, greeting the children nicely, creating a safe environment for them where they feel comfortable and they understand what they're supposed to do and why they're doing it. Ensuring that they're comfortable throughout the scan is a big one, because we don't want any kids to feel uncomfortable with or feel hurt by the cap, or yeah. And then from there, during the summer, there would be no scanning or participants bringing in. There was, but it was very minimal compared to the school year. And so during the summer, I would actually train incoming interns when there would be participants coming in. And then I would also take part in data organization. And so that would be things like, we have like second scorers. And so sometimes the scores would be different from one scorer to another. And so I would work through those and make a consensus on, since it was a quantitative study, I don't think I mentioned that, but, and so my role just gradually changed based on what the lab needed. Because in the summer, a lot of the RAs had left and I was the only RA that kind of knew the protocols. And then we had interns come in from all sorts of universities. And so I got experience in training them while also doing data organization and coding. And so, yeah, and now I'm doing an honors thesis, which is more independent work, but yeah.
Cool. Sounds like you got to jump right into it from the beginning. So that's really awesome. But it sounds like you've gotten a lot of method skills as well as some soft skills like working with others and training others too. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Erin, do you want to talk a little bit about the tasks you started performing and then how it progressed?
Yeah, sure. I started as an RA to code data and do some literature reviews. And for the data, we're just converting qualitative to quantitative. And currently I'm working on an independent project looking at financial literacy in college students and analyzing the data that have been coded. So I actually use what I did in the past few months. I think that would be really interesting to look at the results. And in FastLab, I spent most of my summer doing systematic literature review in the on food addiction, and we look at what specific food is addictive. So for example, like chocolate or pizza, but some people, like we have been looking at previous research from 1970s to 2022, because that was a lot of work and all of our research assistants have been working on that really hard. Some of them are still working on it. And I think starting next week, we'll be starting to create a mock conference poster and present the result of the study as a team in the lab. Yeah, I think that would give us a perspective of how the research is being presented. And I think I will also be working on a proposal for DSM-5 to have food addiction included. And I'm really excited for that.
Very cool. And cool to hear about the progression too from starting out to writing a proposal for DSM. So very cool. What about you, Haley?
Yeah, so I really just dove straight into like recruitment work as soon as I came in. Sorry, I was about to cough. But a lot of what we did initially was actually, I know that I just said like I didn't do a ton of data entry, but it was a little bit different. We just did like a lot of putting in profiles for participants in REDCap. So I really had to learn how to use REDCap, which was a really cool learning experience at first. And then it kind of shifted more into doing like those cold calls with people where I would just ask them a lot of questions, do the screening with them and get them enrolled into the program. And then from there, I've been working and I'm going to start doing them a little bit more. It's just been organizationally difficult. I'm going to start doing post-tests. So a lot of our participants that started in June, since it's a 10-week course, have finished by now. So we do this survey with them afterwards just to kind of get their opinions on the program, what they think that we can improve on. So I'm really looking forward to that because I'm looking forward to having really genuine constructive conversations about the program that we're doing. That's something that I really appreciate about my lab is that it is incredibly collaborative and we're really listening to everyone's perspectives on how to shape this and make it a better program for the people that it serves. And then I am just now started coaching preparation, which essentially consists of me going through the entire program myself And then following, we have like a workbook that we take them through as well. That's like a physical workbook. So I'm working through that as well right now. So yeah, lots of opportunities to do a lot of different things within the lab.
Awesome. And Spirit, if you want to also comment on how what you started with and how it progressed as well.
Yeah, so like I kind of said before, like I kind of just started probably like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So it's kind of the same thing I've been doing, but basically my first assignment was like I said before, they gave us basically the responses of the doctors and like their reasoning for deciding to diagnose or not diagnose the patient with BPD. So they kind of set up already all the responses in like a spreadsheet, and then next to it they put like space for us to summarize it for both did diagnose and did not diagnose. Since it's a lot, they like been splitting it up. So first they gave us the first 25 of both the did diagnose and did not diagnose. And I could just read like an example of like what one of the doctors said. So for did not diagnose, they said that the patient's current ongoing substance misuse makes the diagnosis difficult and also seems to pathologize normal emotional struggle in an emerging adult. So I would just summarize that as like substance misuse from adulting, did not diagnose with EPD. And that's basically the doctor saying like they wouldn't diagnose it because it's just the patient going through life. So that's just basically the type of things I do and just summarize it. They gave us 2 weeks to do the first 25 and we just today got the next set of 25. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing so far.
Thank you. Cindy, I think the next ones are yours.
Yeah. So tell you what, I'm going to make a slight executive decision here to take us a little bit off track. So we have a couple more questions that we could ask, but I realize that we are a little bit after 5 o'clock. So I want to open up the opportunity for other people to ask questions, or if one of you guys has like, an aspect of your experience that you think has been really important that we haven't asked you about. So is any questions from our audience first?
And also feel free to put them in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself.
This is kind of on the spot. I don't have this prepared or anything, but I'm a freshman and I was just wondering how many opportunities I guess freshmen are given. I know it's very, very rare for research opportunities. I'm also not in Europe and things like that. And also kind of when does the STARS program start incorporating and giving out like that research fair, for example, and other opportunities like that.
So I might actually be in the best spot to speak about that. So I would say go ahead and start applying even as a freshman. I mean, I think you've heard from our panel here today that, sometimes it does take a couple of tries. And then if you were to join STAR, we would start you off with in the winter is sort of, as Spirit was saying, like we'd help you like learn the templates for how to contact people, how to identify labs and so on. And then the research fair occurs, I don't recall exactly when, but it's towards the end of the academic year. And then the idea would be like, maybe you could start a position in the summer. But, we also have a research speed networking where you would meet with a lot of different labs quickly. And a lot of times the labs that choose to participate in that are the ones that are looking for people. So I would say, the first step is just, start looking for labs that you're interested in and getting in touch. And don't get discouraged. Thank you, Haley.
Thank you.
I also would like to add to that. I really recommend, because it was recommended to me, that you like do STARS first before starting research. It like opens you up to it, because research is very like, unless you have some type of like experience with it, it can be very like intimidating and like new. It could be moving very fast depending on the type of lab you're in. I feel like STARS really prepared me, like just mentally for it. And I don't even think like their sophomore year is too late to start, but I understand wanting to start as a freshman. I know a lot of my friends do Europe as a freshman too, so do whatever you're comfortable with. But yeah, I definitely recommend like starting off with STARS.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone. I have a question. I'm a junior with no research experience, so I'd like to know what's the best way to get involved in research as soon as possible.
So thoughts from anybody on our panel first? Because James, I
Yeah.
think you were sort of in that situation, weren't you?
Yeah, I was a junior in my second semester and still had no research experience, but I knew I wanted to go to grad school, and so I wanted research experience. But it was nice that I was able to do STAR because that actually just gave me a lot of insight into how to go about things. Just promoting the scholars program here, but it really did help me kind of also build confidence in my ability to ask professors about their labs and their research positions and what I can do. So honestly, I said this earlier, but I feel like what professors are looking for is that your motivation and being able to convey that this is what you want and what you want to do, and why you're interested. I think that really strikes a chord with them because they want people to be motivated to do research and engage with the material that they're putting a lot of hard work into. But I would say visit the office hours of professors you're interested in working with, or email them setting up an appointment, talking about your research interests, read up on like their recent publications, and comment maybe on what is particularly interesting about their research or their lab. And really just try to connect with the professor, whether it be through their research or just personally. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. I feel like I know I was very scared because I wanted research experience, and then I was second year in my junior year. I was a transfer student. I had no idea how to. I've been applying through the research tool and getting nothing back. So I was really frustrated and anxious, but I
Yeah,
think not giving up is a big part of it.
yeah,
Like
I'm in a sort of a similar situation where like I'm applying to a bunch of professors and either getting no reply, or I feel like the lack of experience on the resume,
mhm,
of research experience on the resume, might be kind of holding them back from
yeah,
um,
yeah, I
so
understand. So I think since that also didn't work for me, I think personally, like if you're able to meeting with people in person or even virtually, just sending the email to the PI or the professor and being like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing, why it interests me. Can we maybe talk about like what I can pursue, or like how I can pursue studying this or becoming a research assistant? Or do you know of other labs that are hiring that are similar um, in research interests or ideas and areas? So really, I think that would work better than applying, because that also I found not to be very effective, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I will
okay.
say just, from our perspective as a professor, I mean, right now, unfortunately, we are still in this place where a lot of labs, including mine, are recovering from COVID and not fully up to speed yet. And I would say, like, I still get almost 3 emails a day, like asking for a position, and you do just kind of get overwhelmed. But whereas if it's somebody who's in a class that you're already teaching, and like you get to know this person because they're coming to your office hours, or a lot of times, as some people have mentioned, if you're in a section like get to know your GSI, because they are often the people who are making the decisions. And then another good option is, whether it be STAR or MAPS or something, is, get that mentor, because the mentor is both going to push you and help you with the applications. And they're also going to kind of keep their eye out for opportunities. Like when we mentor somebody, it's kind of like you become our little sister or our kid, and we're like, hey, look at this like cool person over here. You should help them and get them a research position. So, get somebody to advocate for you. That really helps a lot.
I also just want to like add on to like your point you were expressing, like having insecurities without having like research experience, which I think is like totally valid and incredibly valid, it's a valid perspective. But I'm also, I didn't get into research until my second semester of my junior year, and I'm also a transfer student. So I come from a similar background, and really what helped me get into my position, like I know that I had very specific background experience, but further than that, it was really just taking previous experience and positions that I had in my life and applying them as transferable skills to these labs. It really is sometimes about like, I hate to word it like this, but it really is sometimes about like the way that you market yourself. If you come into an interview or if you come into a lab just really expressing like, I just don't have a lot of experience, I really want to make that, it might communicate to them like, oh, maybe they're not going to flourish in this position. I would say just like, if it's easy for you, or if you're able to kind of get into that mindset, really pride yourself on the things that you have accomplished and make it evident to those directors or those people that are hiring in those labs that you are a good potential candidate to be doing that.
Yeah, and that again is where I think the mentorship can come in really handy, because I think finding that right balance between sort of showing your, hey, here's what I can do, but not sounding like a little bit too bold about it. I think, when you're first getting in the habit of, first getting into practice of getting in touch with people, that can be a scary balance to try to strike. So really seek out that mentorship, as I said, whether it be STAR or MAPS or anything like that. Like there's definitely resources to help you out with that.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sorry, just another thing I wanted to add is I learned a lot from the fall semester STAR seminars a lot last year. I think we had how to send code emails to professors and how to talk to professor in office or something like that. Yeah, I think if you can definitely learn a lot from those seminars as well. And another thing is going to office hour and talking to the professor that you're taking class with. That would be really easy, like a really easy way to get connected with someone. Yeah, hope that helped.
Would you recommend reconnecting with like GSIs from previous semesters?
Yeah, sure. I think you can use try to use all the resources that you have, like as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to reach out to your GSIs and to your professors. I mean, we chose this as our job literally because we like to teach and mentor people. So most people, everybody's busy, but I think if they can, they will make the time, and especially if you show a strong interest. Okay, so let me also ask a little bit of a personal question, unless there's any other questions that people want to ask or any last points that you guys want to make. So I'll make this one a little bit of a wild card, and you can pick whichever part you like. So either something that has surprised you about your research experience, or if you either are doing or thinking about doing a senior honors thesis and sort of what led you to that decision. And Spirit, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, I'm only a sophomore, so I'll answer the first part. Something that surprised me definitely was how like welcoming and comforting the environment was of my research team. I don't know why in my mind, because I just overthink things a lot. I just felt like it was just gonna be like, you gotta do this task. If you don't know how to do it, then like, I don't know. But yeah, it was very like helpful and comforting. Also, like with all the other like responsibilities I have as a student and just as a person, like I didn't want to like add on too much stress, but they're very helpful and like they didn't throw too much on me at once. Like the assignments like that I'm starting off with is very doable. They give me enough time for it and I still am able to reach out and ask for help. So I would say that's the thing that surprised me the most.
Erin, how about you?
I think I'll talk about what surprised me as well, because I'm not doing an honor thesis, but I'm doing an independent project. I think what surprised me about is how much you can connect with your professor and graduate students and how much they are willing to share their experience with you. I think I learned a lot by talking to my graduate students, like their experience, their postdoc experience. So some of them took gap years between undergrad and grad school. And I think that was really helpful for my future planning, because I'm actually thinking about taking gap years as well. Yeah, and then I think just to see how the research is actually being conducted is really interesting to me. Like all the process and how the project is not like been done by one person, but everyone is contributing to the research project.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely a team endeavor.
Mhm.
James, how about you?
Yeah, with regards to doing a thesis, I was kind of surprised on how I guess you're still doing your independent work, but it is collaborative in that you're not, I was scared it was kind of gonna be like, all right, design everything on your own. And we're kind of here if you have like a question or two, and then you can, you're on your own kind of sort of thing. But it's more so I guess the kind of like warmth and encouragement I wasn't really expecting, of just like having a good support system, and also in the lab, and also with doing an honors thesis, I guess one thing that surprised me is which is a general aspect of research, is the unexpected things happen a lot and things get changed a lot. And so but not being alone in processes like that is very helpful in that, I don't have to be the only one that has to deal with this unexpected outcome or changing the stimuli or whatnot. So that is something that surprised me, definitely, just how dynamic research requires you to be, to adapt to certain situations. But it's also nice that you're not